This is part 14 of What If Naruto Lost His Sight. Link in description. If you enjoy this what if, then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Hope you enjoy. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Start chapter 36. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. It didn't take very long getting to my apartment. I threw open the door, pausing at the threshold as I took in the comforting smells of my old home, my orchid making its presence known on the kitchen table. I smiled slightly as I walked over to it, petting one of its soft petals. "Hey Kanari-chan, how've you been?" I asked it sweetly. I wasn't sure how I felt about the plant when I got it, but her comforting scent and constant presence made her grow on me, so to speak. I pinched one of her leaves between my fingers gently, noticing that it felt a little dry. "Thirsty, huh?" I asked as I waked over to the freezer to fetch an ice cube. "Not surprised. I'm pretty sure I was supposed to water you 2 days ago. Sorry about that, couldn't get back before now." Dropping the ice cube onto the soil near the stem, I sat down at the table, propping my head up on my hands. "I don't know what to do," I told the plant. "It really shouldn't be this big of an issue, really. I would have jumped on the chance to find the new Hokage before all of this, but now I'm not sure if I should. On one hand, I could go and not only get an epic mission under my belt, but maybe have this Tsunade fix my eyes. On the other, I could play it safe, not risk the pain returning but possibly lose the chance to ever see again. I just don't know." "Why don't you stop bitching and let me sleep?" a deep, groggy voice murmured in my mind. "You're awake," I said, perking up a bit at his voice. I kinda missed him over the last few days, but I wasn't going to let him know that. And here I was enjoying the silence for once. "Sure you were, Kit. You didn't miss me in the slightest," he stated, sarcasm coming of his words in waves. "Even if you did, it's not like I can hear your thoughts and call your bluff." "Shut up," I muttered, burying my face in my hands. "I would, but someone's indecisiveness woke me up, so now I can't," the Kyuubi said through the bond. "Can't, or won't," I said into my hands. "Both." "Great." I dropped my head completely down onto the table, turning so my cheek lay against the cool wood surface. "You can at least make yourself useful and help me figure this out." "But I'm not." "Why?" I whined, getting an annoyed huff from the Kyuubi in response. "Because you already have everything you need." "Whatever I have to say you've already heard," he stated, making me frown. "Not to mention, we both know you've already made your decision. You're just trying to muster the courage to actually follow through with it." "You're right," I said after a moment of silence. "This really shouldn't surprise you. I'm an ancient demon that knows a lot more than any of you puny humans, let alone one tiny kid. So the fact that you can read my mind like a book wasn't part of it at all, huh?" Well, I can't say it didn't help. I sighed, sitting up in my chair once again. "Guess I should start packing then." I climbed out of the chair and started towards my room. "Can I go back to sleep now, or do you need me to walk you through that as well?" "I think I figure out what to bring on my own, thank you very much." Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. The next day. "All right, I think I have everything," I told the Kyuubi happily as I walked down the road after having finished my shopping for the trip. "I do, right, I didn't forget to get something, did I?" "Honestly, I think you overpacked," the fox said lazily. "I mean, do you really need 100 packs of instant ramen?" Yes, I do. It's my emergency rations in case we can't find a ramen shop where we are," I said, holding my full ceiling scroll protectively against my chest. "It's necessary. Ramen stands are as common houseflies. And, in my opinion, just as annoying." "Take that back, you heathen." I frowned as the Kyuubi made sure I knew he was rolling his eyes at me. "What did I do to get stuck with you as a container?" He muttered to himself, no doubt shaking his head at me. "Oh, I don't know, I said to him, sarcasm heavy in my voice. It might have something to do with how you destroyed half of Konoha the day I was born. I had expected an immediate retort of some sort, so when I didn't get one I was kinda confused. It was almost 30 seconds before he actually said something. You wouldn't be joking about that if you knew what really happened, he answered, sounding more serious than normal. Okay, I wanted to ask him about it, but something told me that I would be getting a straight answer out of him anytime soon. So I let it go. Well, I don't know about you, but all that talk of ramen made me really hungry. How am I not surprised? Let me guess, Ichiraku's. Where else? I answered with a grin. I turned the corner to find that same shop right in front of me. And it just happens to be right there. It must be fate. Or it was planned from the beginning. Well, it is dinner time, I told him with a grin. I continued towards the shop, breathing in the beautiful smell of ramen that wafted towards me. Before I knew it, I was at the shop sitting on my favorite stool, waiting for Ayime to finish serving another guest. Naruto. Ayime greeted happily when she noticed me. How are you? Better, I answered with a smile. I was a bit beat up after the exams, but it wasn't anything too serious. For you, I'm pretty sure most consider chakra exhaustion to be very serious, the Kyuubi muttered, but I ignored him. That's good, Ayime said, the kind smile on her face so wide that my echoes could just pick it up. I'm glad you weren't seriously hurt in that fiasco. My father and I were going to go to the event but were too swamped at the stall to get away. As upset as we were about missing your fight, we're sort of glad we couldn't make it. Me too. It was chaos over there. You guys could have been hurt. I don't know what I'd do if that happened. For one, I'd have to find a new ramen shop. I stopped short when she swatted me lightly upside the head. I laughed as she stood there with a hand on her hip, no doubt smiling at my antics. Oh, I see how it is, he said, a playful tone in her voice. And here I was going to let you have your first 3 bowls on the house. I guess I don't. I didn't mean it. I could never find a better shop than you guys. Honest. So predictable, he muttered as Ayime burst out laughing, unable to contain her amusement any longer. And don't forget it, she said around her laughter. She ruffled my hair briefly before starting towards the back. What type? Beef, I exclaimed happily. Coming right up. Arigato, I called back as I settled into my seat, enjoying the calm I haven't had the chance to experience in quite a while. Ever since the exams started, it's been non-stop chaos, one thing after another that I've been forced to deal with on the fly. So it was kind of nice to just be able to sit here and relax. But it didn't last for long. It was like that girl had some sort of sensor that alerted her to my calmest moments, because no sooner had I relaxed did a force tackle me, almost sending me to the ground. I was confused for only a moment before the familiar smell of beetles and water surrounded me. I really should be expecting her by now. Damn it, Fu, do you always hide me? She demanded in an almost panicked whisper. I looked towards her blankly for a moment, completely confused by the new turn of events. Why? I asked slowly. She looked behind her for a moment before turning back towards me, almost as if she was expecting someone to be following her. I don't want to leave, that's why, she shouted before wincing at the volume and covering her mouth, letting go of me in the process. Still confused. I was supposed to leave this morning, she stated quietly from behind her hand. But I don't want to, so I might have taken off without my sensei knowing. Again, and I might have been running around Konoha avoiding him all day. I shook my head at her as she lowered her hand from her mouth. So that's why the Anbu have been antsy. Great job. So hurry up and hide me already. He's been getting closer and I'm running out of options, she explained, sounding desperate again. I simply propped my arm on the counter, resting my chin on my hand almost casually. Why? What? Fu asked, confusion coloring her voice. Why should I hide you? Because if you don't, I'll steal every speck of clothing you own on my way out. Right down to your boxers. Fair enough. Hop the counter. I'll cover for you. Thanks, she said, a grin in her voice as she popped over the counter and disappeared underneath it. She was just barely hidden when a man came running around the corner, acting like he was on one of the Torah missions. His head was snapping back and forth before it stopped on the ramen stand. He stared as I made a point to look away from him, all the while keeping one of my secondary echo points trained on him. When he started walking towards the stand, I sighed, knowing this wasn't going to end very well. Is he coming? Fu whispered, her voice muffled by the counter. Yup. Do you think he knows I'm here? Probably. I'm not coming out unless he drags me. I'm sure he could arrange that, I whispered, noting how close he was now. Quiet or he'll hear you. When the man entered the stall, I was playing with a pair of chopsticks, making myself look like nothing more than a bored child waiting for their food. He glanced around the small establishment before clearing his voice in order to get my attention. I turned towards him, my best innocent child face on just in case. Can I help you? I asked simply. Are you lost? You look kinda lost. It's all right though, a lot of foreigners can't find their way around here. It's nothing to be ashamed of, even though it's a pretty simple layout. He stared at me for a long moment. I almost thought I had lost him somewhere along the line, but I hadn't said much. So, I asked again, snapping him out of his revelry. What? Are you lost? No, I'm not lost, he answered finally, sounding annoyed with me already. But my student is. Right, I got ya, I said, giving him a knowing smile. Honest, I'm not lost. Don't worry about it. I tried to wink only to realize that he couldn't see my eyes. Instead, I just continued speaking. And where does your student need to go? No, I'm looking for my student. His exasperated tones almost making me chuckle. She is lost. I'm looking for her. I am not lost. All right, I get it. Jeesh, no need to be rude. I pouted slightly until Ayime came around with my ramen. I perked up immediately, even as she paused for a moment, probably catching sight of Fu, before delivering my food. Thanks, Ayime. You're the best. You're welcome, she answered, sounding a little confused, but she was nice enough not to bring it up now. Well, what does your student look like? Maybe I can help you find her. Green, blue hair above her shoulders. White clothes with a bright red bag on her back, he said, sounding impatient. Have you seen her? I pretended to think for a moment, tapping my chopsticks against my chin before turning them towards my ramen. Sorry, can't say I have. I fought hard to keep from smirking, ultimately failing when I heard an amused snort come from under the desk. I shoved a good chunk of noodles in my mouth to hide it. There was a small, awkward pause before he continued. Are you sure? He asked, his voice skeptical. I was pretty sure by now he knew where she was and was simply giving her the chance to reveal herself without much of a fuss. After all, she wasn't exactly being subtle. But there was no way I was going to risk losing my wardrobe by giving up the game now. Yup, I said around my noodles. I slurped them loudly, earning a disgusted sound from the man questioning me. Why do I not believe you? He asked. Sighing, I set my chopsticks aside and turned to face him, making sure to aim my face towards him. Look, if I'd seen the girl I would have told you. I don't lie, it's not my thing. When he still didn't say anything, I continued. I'd rather get mauled by a rabid fox than tell you something that was untrue. A fox, he said, making me pause. Why a fox? It's just a figure of speech. I could have used any animal and it would have worked just the same. You really shouldn't look too deep into it. You're right, I was being too skeptical, he relented after a long moment. I would like to apologize but don't seem to know your name. That's all right, I grinned as I picked up my chopsticks once again, digging them into the noodles in front of me. And I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Of course, I should have recognized you instantly. You competed in the final test, didn't you? Yup, I answered with a grin. Did pretty good, if I do say so myself. You're also one of 3 contestants to use foreign chakra during your tests, he said, making me pause, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. I believe you know what I'm talking about. Should I? You're being very confusing right now, I stated, slowly eating a few noodles. Yes, you should, and you do, he said, coming closer as he did, too close for my comfort. And how would you know this? I asked, trying to ignore the way his breath was pushing my hair around. Because you could have used any animal, but you didn't. You said a fox. Are you a Yamanaka? Because that sounds like something they would say, I said, but he ignored my attempt to change the conversation. I've only known one person to speak of foxes so casually in Konoha. Funny that you share her surname, he all but whispered. I froze in my seat, trying desperately to figure out what he was talking about. No one has the same surname as me. It was a made-up name to make me feel better about not having a family, I was sure of it. I have never heard the name Uzumaki said when not speaking about me, so why was this guy claiming he knew one? End chapter 36. Start chapter 37. Blindsided by twice the trouble. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. Hey kid, you might want to actually pay attention to this guy, Kyubi said, startling me out of my own thoughts. But he said. I know what he said. We can discuss it later. But right now you need to get control of this conversation. Stop reacting to him and make him react to you. But how? If you were listening to him you'd know exactly how. I nodded briefly as I focused back to the man next to me. He was still leaning close, but now I recognized it for what it was, an intimidation tactic. It was a pretty good one, and a conscious decision on his part. He knew what he was doing. If I had to guess, he was probably part of Taki's TI department before taking over as Fu-sensei. I smirked to myself, I could work with that. So, what happened? Did you leave the TI department willingly or did they throw you out for being such a dick? I asked, making him sputter to a stop. Excuse me. I'm guessing it's the second one. After all, I doubt chasing Fu all day would be anyone's dream job, I said, stirring the noodles with my chopsticks slowly. I bet they were happy to see you go too. Gave them a chance to hire someone with real talent instead of having to drag your useless ass around each interrogation. Now listen here, you damn foe, he hissed, leaning closer as he did. I cut him off before he got too far. I wouldn't continue that if I were you, I whispered, a smile back on my face. It could be dangerous. Oh yeah, and what are you going to do to me? Me? Oh, absolutely nothing. Not my job to punish lawbreakers. It is, however, theirs. I motioned lazily to one of the ANBUs across the street just before it disappeared to find a better hiding spot. What law? Shame on you, coming into a foreign village and not even bothering to read up on their laws. I clicked my tongue at him in fake disapproval before continuing. Don't worry, I'll tutor you. You see, almost 13 years ago, the third Hokage created a law that whoever spoke directly about my furry little friend in reference to me would be immediately given the death sentence. I paused for a moment, letting him process the words I just said. I wished I could have seen his eyes widen in shock, but I was able to make do with the stunted gasp he gave instead. He took a step backwards out of my personal space, making me smile a little more. So you see, you really dodged a bullet on that one. You're welcome. What sort of maniac would enact a law like that? A maniac that actually saw those like me as human beings and not mobile super weapons, I said, my voice serious. I know, it's a bit of a hard concept to understand, at least for you. Why you little? I'd suggest leaving Konoha before you say something that will get you killed. He straightened himself up, obviously trying to regain as much dignity as possible before leaving. Come along, Fu. he said, his voice ice. No one moved for a long moment. Don't make me come back there and drag you out. She sighed as a shuffling was heard from under the counter. She stood up slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She hopped to the other side slowly, dragging her feet on purpose. Go collect your things, he ordered, not even looking towards her. Hi sensei, she murmured, but didn't move. Bye Naruto, I'll miss you. Bye, I said, unsure of what else to say. Will you come and visit? She asked, her voice hopeful. Do I have to? Yes, or I'll start collecting for my quilt again. After all, I'm not sure I have enough t-shirts to make a good size one. You were serious about that? I demanded, making her chuckle. Fine, I'll visit. Yay, you're the best, she exclaimed. You're the worst, I murmured, making her laugh. She moved as if to hug me, but after glancing at her sensei, her arms dropped back to her sides. Before either of us could say anything about it, her sensei cleared his throat, motioning for her to be on her way. She huffed in annoyance, but followed his order. After she was a few feet away, then leaned in once again. You stay away from her, do you hear me? He hissed, his voice low and threatening. We will not put up with two of your kind interacting in that way. Tell her that, I stated simply, turning my attention back towards my ramen. He started to say something else, but I cut him off before he could finish his breath. Have a nice trip. Don't let the gate hit your ass on the way out. I continued eating as if nothing happened as he walked out. You shouldn't have done that, the Kyuubi stated, long after he was out of earshot. You're right, I relented easily. What I should have done was follow him and make sure it really did hit him in the ass. But I've got ramen to eat, so he's let off the hook. For now, maybe next time, You know what I mean. Yup, I shouldn't have pissed him off so badly, right? Well, what can I say, that's what I do best. Trust me, I know. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. 2 days later. Hey Ero Senin, I shouted as I ran up to him. He was standing next to the village gates talking to the two eternal chunin about something I didn't really care to listen to. He had a small bag on his back that was about the same size as mine, and probably just as full of storage seals as mine too. He looked up towards me, waving lazily as I got close. You took long enough, Gaki. I've been waiting here for 20 minutes, he stated, not sounding annoyed much at all. I'm not Kakashi. If I says 8 o'clock, I mean 8 o'clock. I know, I stated as I came to a stop behind him, catching my breath as I did. I had to find someone to watch Kanari-chan. Who? Jiraiya asked after a moment. Kanari-chan. She's the orchid I got from Ino, I answered with a smile. She couldn't stay at my apartment alone for a month, so I had to have someone plant sit. I was going to ask Ino, but then I remembered, she trades her services for gossip and, well, the gossip she'd want I didn't want to share. But then I saw Sakura and asked her. She wasn't going to do it, but changed her mind when I said that Ino would probably do it better anyways. You played her on purpose. I'm impressed. Thanks. My grin widened at the praise. Is that the only reason you're late? He asked. I paused for a moment, before answering. For the most part, there was silence again as he waited for me to elaborate. I may have stopped to prank Sasuke before coming here. I figured if I was going to be out of the village, I could at least leave him a goodbye present. What did you do? His voice all but told me he was rolling his eyes at my antics. Not much, I said, shifting my feet in the dirt as I spoke. I just broke into his house, rearranged his furniture and hid his TV remote in the ceiling. I don't believe you could do that all before getting here. Believe what you will, it doesn't really matter to me, I said, shrugging nonchalantly. It doesn't change the fact that when I get back, I'll be able to fetch the remote and start turning his TV on and off at will. You should have done that weeks ago, but I'll let it slide. Whatever you say, he said, straightening up as he fixed his straps. "Are you ready to go?" "Naruto." I heard Sakura shout in the distance. It came from the direction of Sasuke's apartment complex. The thought of what she'd do to me for wrecking his room scared the snot out of me. "The sooner the better!" Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. A few hours later. "Sue," I started as we made our way down what felt like a dirt road. "Where exactly are we going?" "We've been walking for almost 3 hours and you just thought to ask now?" he asked, turning towards me. He had an amused tone in his voice, but I doubt it really surprised him very much. "It doesn't really matter if I know where we're going if I'm following you," I pointed out, kicking a rock on a path. I tried to focus on it as it flew, but it disappeared from my vision almost immediately, only to reappear after hitting the ground and rolling a few feet. I frowned. "I just asked because I was curious. What would you have done if we got separated, If you don't know where we're going, then you wouldn't be able to regroup there." "You have a point," I relented after a moment. "But you still haven't answered my question." "Just one of the nearby villages. We should get there by tomorrow evening," he said, a smirk in his voice. I kicked another rock, watching it disappear a few inches after making contact with my foot. I frowned again. "You think she's there?" I questioned. "Not a chance. But it's a good spot to procure some lead on her whereabouts," he said simply. I nodded as I kicked another rock. The results were the same as before, making me frown once again. "Care to explain why you're glaring at that rock like it personally offended you?" "I'm not glaring at it. Gaki, your glare's so fierce that you're giving your emo teammate a run for his money." "I am not," I exclaimed, glaring at him when he kicked the rock before I could reach it. "See, if I didn't know any better, I'd think this rock was personally responsible for killing your entire clan or something like that. I doubt Sasuke would appreciate you comparing his brother to a rock," I said flatly, turning my attention back to said stone. "Neither would Itachi, but that still won't stop me from naming this rock after him." "I'm thinking Iwaki," he said, a grin in his voice. I sighed loudly, my face connecting fiercely with my palm. "I hate you. You know that, right?" I muttered to him, after a moment. "I'm well aware." Jiraiya bent down to pick up my rock, not even interrupting his stride to do so. "What I don't know is why you suddenly hate the rock as well." "I don't hate the rock," I exclaimed, throwing my hands in the air in exasperation. "I hate the fact that my chakra echoes can't pick it up while it's flying through the air." "Ah, that would do it," he said, nodding to himself. "Let me guess, your echoes can't keep up with it. It moves too fast." "Well, glaring at it isn't going to make it move any slower." "I know that, and I wasn't glaring. I was trying to figure out if I could fix it, or if I should just leave it alone." "Try working on your chakra control," Jiraiya suggested, earning an exasperated sound from me. "That's your answer to everything. If you don't like my answers, then figure it out on your own." That's what I was doing. There was silence between the two of us for quite a while before Jiraiya broke it. "You should work on your control though. And how do you expect me to do that while we're traveling?" "I'm sure I can figure something out," he said, his tone suddenly making me regret asking. Whatever he had up his sleeves, he sounded way too happy about it. "You know what? I changed my mind. It doesn't bother me at." "Too late. My mind's made up," he said, earning a groan from me. He tossed the rock aside as he reached into his bag and pulling out a small sealing scroll. He opened it up in one hand and released a small bit of chakra into it with the other. A moment later there was a small poof that revealed something small and spherical item in his hands. "Catch." He threw it at me, making me lose sight of it for the length of time it took to reach my hand. I fumbled briefly before finally getting a good grasp on it. Whatever the thing was, it was about the size of my palm and kinda squishy. I squeezed it a few times, noting the sound of moving water inside the sphere. The closest thing I could think of was a water balloon, but why would Jiraiya have one of those with him on a mission? That's your next exercise, he said proudly. You have to pop the water balloon. I looked towards him for quite some time as I tried to figure out what he was up to. I was really confused by this point. I mean, what would popping a water balloon have to do with chakra control? But what do I know? So I shrugged and began reaching for a kunai. Not with a kunai, Jiraiya said with a small sigh. With your chakra, you have to channel into the balloon and move the water around until it pops. Why? Because it's a good way to build your chakra control, he said with a nod of his head. It's technically the first step to a cool jutsu, I know, but I don't think you're quite ready for all of that. So you're having me do an exercise from a jutsu that you're not even going to teach me yet. Think of it as getting a head start for when I do teach it to you. I did mention how much I hate you, right? That's twice so far today. Just checking. End chapter 37. Start chapter 38. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Chapter 38. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Same time. Two cloaked figures made their own way down a dirt path leading to Konoha. The pair were certainly intimidating, one being a blue, vicious-looking man with a large sword, the other a shorter, long-haired man whose presence was enough to keep people away. Either men were easily recognizable, even without their matching black cloaks being taken into account. Hey Itachi, Kisame asked, walking in front of him a few steps. He was currently trying to get his partner's attention, but was failing epically. He'd been attempting to talk to the eldest Uchiha brother since the start of the trip, but hadn't gotten more than a yes or no answer from the man. Are you excited to see your little brother? Itachi didn't bother to even acknowledge the question. I bet he won't be very excited to see you. Again, there was no answer. I mean, you did kill his whole family. If he's happy to see you after that, then there's something wrong with the kid. A faint caw could be heard in the distance, but no response from his partner. Then again, he is related to you, so who knows? Kisame shrugged dramatically, only for it to turn into a chaotic flail when a large, black-shaped dive bombed his head. What the hell? Kisame spun around to follow the thing and watch as it landed on Itachi's outstretched arm. The large crow stared at him for a long moment, cocking its head to the side before turning to his summoner, chattering in his ear. Itachi listened intently, nodding occasionally as if he could understand the bird's annoying twittering. After a long moment, the bird leaned back, apparently done with his report. Good job, Itachi murmured back to him. Continue watching them. What the hell was that about? Kisame asked as the bird cawed and took off into the sky. Itachi said nothing more as he turned around and started back the way they came. Hey, you know Konoha's the other way, right? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is no longer in Konoha, Itachi informed him simply when the fishman caught up to him. Oh, Kisame stated, good, I didn't want to see that tree-hugging village anyways. They walked in silence for a minute or so before Kisame once again broke it. You had your bird dive bomb me on purpose, didn't you? He asked with narrowed eyes on his partner. The only response he got was a hint of a smirk hiding behind the other's tall collar. Bastard! Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. 1 day later. I groaned in frustration as we entered a random town, the same water balloon from yesterday still in my hand, unpopped. I couldn't figure out how he expected me to be able to pop the stupid balloon by just swirling my chakra around. It was stupid. Not only did the water not want to move with my chakra in the first place, when the stupid balloon just stretched. It was never going to work. I had told Ero-Sanin this yesterday, but he just chuckled and told me there was a trick to it. He then proceeded to ignore me whenever I asked him about said trick. Over the last day and a half I've been tempted more than once to chuck the stupid balloon at the back of his spiky head, but I didn't. Not sure how I pulled that off with the Kyuubi encouraging me to do so the entire time. Cheer up, kid, Jiraiya said in response to my groan. We get a real bed for once. I had a real bed the other night. My own bed, I said, letting the hand clutching the balloon drop to my side. True, but they'll be rare for the rest of our trip, so I suggest savoring it while we have it. As he spoke, a group of women walked by us, catching my sensei's attention. Even blind I could tell that his eyes were glued to their persons. Speaking of savoring. Hey Ero Sennin, I said loudly, making sure the women could hear me. How are we supposed to find a hotel if you're ogling women the whole time? Jiraiya's head snapped towards me as the women whispered among themselves. I gave him my most innocent look as we came to a stop, even going so far as to tilt my head to the side curiously. Don't give me that look, he hissed. You know exactly what you're doing. Doing what? I'm simply curious on how long it's going to take to get a hotel. We've been traveling a long time, sensei, and I'm tired, I said, fighting a smirk as I spoke. I invented that look, brat, he answered, still staring me down. You can't fool me. But sensei, I don't need to fool you, I said, turning towards the women as they whispered about cruel men and unrelenting teachers, the whole time looking towards my sensei. Brat, he whispered back as he started heading down the road once again. I smirked as I jogged to catch up. Why did I bring you again? Because I'm awesome, I exclaimed happily, ignoring the snort of amusement that came from Jiraiya. And someone has to make sure you stay on track. If you were left to yourself, you would be too busy, researching, to do the mission. I work just fine without supervision, thank you very much. He stopped walking as he held a hand out to indicate a building to my right. See, I knew this hotel was right around the corner, so my distraction, as you put it, wasn't as bad as you were making it out to be. Then why are we still standing outside? I asked. He turned to look at me for a long moment before letting out an exasperated sigh. Come on, Jiraiya said as he walked into the building. I followed close behind him as he stepped up to the main desk and ordered a single room with 2 beds. As he was paying for the room, a clearly female figure passed by, gaining his attention once again. He was gawking at her, his jaw dropped so far that even my echoes could pick it up. I was about to call him out on it when I heard her giggle before doing something that seemed like blowing him a kiss. I was so surprised that someone was flirting with my mess of a sensei that my words were lost before I could even say them. Jiraiya let out a giggle of his own, though his sounded more perverted than hers had been. He quickly took the keys the man had been offering him for almost a minute, and tossed them towards me. Here ya go, kid. I'll be back a little later. I have to gather, he said, a clearly perverted tone in his voice. He took a few steps to follow her out of the building before yelling back to me. Behave while I'm gone. Before I could even come up with an appropriate response, he had already left. Looks like you were ditched, kid, the Kyuubi stated, amusement of his own curling around his words. If he doesn't come back with information about Tsunade's whereabouts, then I'm not letting him in. Sounds like a plan to me, he agreed as I left to find my room. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. 2 hours later. I groaned, throwing myself back onto the bed I had already claimed. Needless to say, I was a tad frustrated. According to my watch, it had been almost 2 hours since Ero Sennin had ditched me, and there was still no sign of him. I was pretty sure the sun had already set since I no longer felt its warmth from when it was shining in my window, but was he here? No. Not only had my sensei not shown up yet, but his damn balloon sat in front of me, happily still whole. Why can't things be nice and easy for once? I asked out loud, not expecting an answer. Because then it would be boring, and who wants to watch a boring life play out in front of you? Shikamaru, I answered without a pause, earning an amused snort from the fox. I'll give you that one, he said, a smirk in his voice. Yay. Shouldn't you be focusing on that exercise instead of complaining to an empty room? I would, but as you already know, I can't figure it out. It's not that difficult. I have an ability that does something similar, the Kyuubi stated simply, making me shoot back into a sitting position while he continued speaking. At least it is, if I'm right about what he's preparing to teach you. You know what jutsu this goes to? Probably. The one I'm thinking of was based on one of mine after all. Yes, I exclaimed happily. I'm not helping you. What? Why? Before I could continue speaking, there was a loud knock on the door, interrupting my question. Room service, a muffled voice announced from the other side of the door. I didn't move as my echoes narrowed in on the door. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I hadn't ordered any room service, especially from someone clearly faking a female voice. My hand curling around the balloon, I stayed silent. I focused on my hearing, barely picking up a small grunt of pain from the other side. Not room service, a different voice said. It was clearly male and couldn't have held any less emotion if the person tried. Delivery. Ramen delivery compliments from a tall, flamboyant man with spiky white hair. White hair? I asked Kyuubi, who had gone oddly quiet. Jiraiya. Oh, I thought, relaxing at the thought of getting ramen for dinner. I had already eaten some of my emergency rations, but that wasn't anything compared to the real thing. The Kyuubi growled in annoyance but didn't say anything. Without another thought, I hopped off the bed and padded towards the door. I still felt like something was wrong, but the thought of ramen overruled everything else. My fingers had almost touched the doorknob when I realized exactly what was making this feel off. There was no ramen smell coming from the door, just fish and birds. In fact, I hadn't smelled a single whiff of ramen since I had left Konoha except for the few instant containers I had made myself. If there was a ramen stand in this small town, I would have smelled it long before now. I stood in front of the door, frozen once again. Whoever was on the other side of it didn't have the best intentions for me. They wanted me to open the door so they could get in. I didn't know why, but there was no way I was opening that door to find out, especially without my sensei around. I slowly started walking backwards, careful to not make a sound as I put distance between myself and the door. I had only taken a few steps when I heard one of the men on the other side speak. Forget this, he muttered only a moment before disappeared from its hinges. The sound of splintering wood filled the room as the swiftly shifting air warned me move. Now. I dropped to the floor immediately, a large piece of door missing my head by maybe half an inch. Unfortunately, I was unable to dodge the smaller pieces as well, several of them making gashes on my face and arms. I bit back a yell as a larger one embedded itself in my shoulder. And that's how it's done, the man said smugly. I glanced up at them, finding two human-shaped figures where the door used to be. One was taller than the other with what seemed to be a large sword on his back. I was trying not to make this messy, the second one said. Judging from the monotone voice he was using, he had been the one talking about ramen delivery. Now we have to rush. So, it's just one little genin. It won't take that long anyways, the taller one said as he stepped into the room. I climbed to my feet, my arm now gripping the wound around the large splinter. The man turned towards me, his grin wide and pointy. Will it, little leaf boy? Who are you? I asked through gritted teeth. That's none of your business, he said as his partner came to stand beside him. I think it is. After all, you burst into my room, breaking my door, and are after me for some reason. I think it's only fair that I know who did it, I said as my mind desperately trying to sum up with some way to get out of this. The pair glanced at each other. He makes a pretty good point, the tall one stated. Do what you want, he's coming with us anyways. True, it's not like he'll be able to tell anyone, the larger one grinned again. I'm Kisame and this is my partner Itachi. Nice to meet ya. I could say the same, but I don't think almost killing me with a door can ever count as nice. My wounded arm shifted slightly as I spoke, making me realize there was something still in my hand. Something squishy and the balloon. I wasn't exactly sure what I could do with it, but I'd figure something out. But first, I needed a distraction. Wait, Itachi, as in Uchiha Itachi. The very same. You don't look like a rock, I stated. In the confused silence that followed, I shifted my hand so that it was now gripping the splinter. What? You know, Itachi, Iwaki. I slid one leg back so I was in a better stance. Oh, never mind, it was a bad pun to start with. Before either of them could answer, I yanked the piece of wood out of my shoulder and launched it at them, following it closely by the balloon. I didn't expect much, so I wasn't surprised when the splinter was dodged and the balloon popped. I was quite happy that it splashed the front of the Itachi's cloak. In the distraction, I tried to dodge around them and through the door, only to be grabbed by the back of my coat and tossed roughly back into the room. I winced as my back came in contact with the wall. Nice try, brat. Really, I was sure you were going to charge at us with no though whatsoever. Kisame said as he meandered towards me. I struggled to climb to my feet, keeping my echoes trained on him as I felt familiar light-burning sensation of Kyuubi chakra fixing my wounds. It would take a few minutes before it was done, but I didn't exactly have that amount of time. He stopped a few feet away from me, his posture as relaxed as ever. But you're still no match for us. End chapter 38. This is the end of part 14 of What If Naruto Lost His Sight. If you enjoyed this what if, then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. I'll see you all in the next what if. Peace out.